Welcome back to another episode of BestowCast. At the time of this recording, Bestow TV has done a takeover of Mr. Lobo's Cinema Insomnia Twitch stream while Mr. Lobo is away doing some film shootings down in California. And, and just recently, Roger Corman had passed away. So in our last live stream, we did a Roger Corman tribute where we did the bloodsuckers, blood-sucking leeches from California. So in remembrance of Roger Corman, we did a Cinema Insomnia episode. We aired a Cinema Insomnia episode, rather, the Bloodsuckers of the Atomic Swap, which I helped produce, and I'm the leech known as the Big Spoon, and I'm the limb and quite a few other things. I get to smack Lobo around with that's kind of become my thing on Cinema Insomnia. Is I get to smack Lobo around with props. So we had Sally the zombie cheerleader here and myself and we played tribute to Roger Corman by watching that movie, which that movie that's not the original movie. That's just the name of the movie. Damn it. The chat's telling me that it's Bloodsuckers of the Atomic Swamp, but I also see a title here that's called The Giant Leeches. So we played tribute to Corman by watching that, and I thought, what would be best for BestowCast, since I always, kind of focus more on the Geek Central. I always, our tagline is that we're about geek culture. Famously, Roger Corman had produced a movie that never came out. His only movie that he never, ever released, which is Fantastic Four. I did my homework. I watched the YouTubes for the Fantastic Four movie, because you can't buy it well, you can buy it, but you can't legitimately. Let's try that again. You can't legitimately buy it on physical media, but there's a lot of streaming services that have it. This is famously one of those movies that was kind of made just to keep the rights, or at least that was the rumor. So like I said, I did my homework and I watched that, and I watched another movie that was called, off the top of my head, I think it was just Doom: The Untold Tales of the Fantastic Four movie, to get some insight on it. And it's kind of interesting because we live in a day and age. So like you have movies that come out where a company bought the rights to use that character, and by contract they have to use that character, or they lose the rights. The rights revert back to the original copyright holders. So you kind of have that currently with films like Spider-Man, where Sony owns the rights to Spider-Man, so Disney can't really do anything about it, and Sony has to keep making movies with Spider-Man. So we kind of get into this kind of gray area where Disney and Sony reach a deal where they're where Disney is allowed to use Spider-Man in like Spider-Man movies. Well, I think the Spider-Man movie is a co-produced movie. It's produced by both of them, and then but they can use Spider-Man in like Infinity War, or any crossovers that they need Spider-Man for. They can have him. He can be in. No, I think Doctor Strange was in his movie. I don't think he was in Doctor Strange's movie. But you have a lot of that. So basically, my understanding for how that deal went, Disney can borrow Spider-Man for their crossovers, and in exchange, Sony doesn't have to make a movie with Spider-Man specific. Sony can make movies with Spider-Man adjacent characters, and by doing so, they extend their license so that their license doesn't ever elapse. So you get movies like Venom, or you get movies like Morbius. I knew Morbius from the the Spirits of Vengeance comics. So like my introduction to Morbius isn't through Spider-Man. It's actually through Ghost Rider and Blade and all those other. He was always like one of the dark characters. For me, it was like Morbius is okay. Venom was Venom minus Spider-Man, which it's an okay movie, but it just doesn't gel right when you don't have who he's originating from. It's okay if they're going to try to keep their contract. It's an okay movie. Morbius, I believe it or not, I don't hate Morbius. Morbius is not that bad. I know it became a meme and everything else, but then we get to like Madam Web and Kraven the Hunter. And when I saw Madam Web, I'm like, nah, I'm not going. I'm not even bothering to go in the movies. I'm not going to support Sony in this. Just if you're going to use the character, just why botch it? Just make a good movie. Just make a good movie with those characters. Well, or you had the Spider Women in there. Make the movie about Spider Woman plus Madam Web. I don't. It was more the same. I didn't bother. I'm not going to bother with Kraven the Hunter. They're trying to. The last thing that I read is that he's supposed to. Well, he's a good guy, or he's a morally gray character, and he's supposed to be more on par with Steve Irwin, the Crocodile Hunter. No, pass. I just pass. You kind of have examples of that in current day where they're just kind of making things just so they can extend their license, so that they can keep going with this, or they can keep that in their wheelhouse. Other things are like, so there. I wanted to talk a little bit about like Batgirl, where they made a Batgirl movie, but it wasn't necessarily a rights issue. That was more so of a studio head taking over. I forget who it was. Discovery bought AT&T / Warner Brothers, and needed to cut the budget. The CEOs the CEOs needs their monies. They needs their monies now. So I believe that Batgirl, since the Snyderverse whole DC universe was kind of getting rebooted anyway, they had to cut their losses, and Batgirl rather, never saw the light of day. It's just something that totally got shelved. So you got like kind of two extremes where like, well, I guess because Warner Brothers owns DC, they can get away with shelving a movie, versus say like Sony, where they're forced to put out a subpar movie just to keep the rights. So all that long explanation is to circle back around to this 1994. The release date's listed 1994. Sometimes you see it for 1993. Sometimes you see this. I guess it was filmed in 1992. And there's like conflicting reports where this movie was made without telling anybody. It was just to extend the rights to the owner. Hey, I'm going to botch his first name, so I'm just going to go by his last name, which is Eschlinger, who owned the rights to. He somehow got a hold of the rights for Fantastic Four, and he wanted to maintain the rights. But if you watch Doomed, you don't know who or where or what point it was decided that this movie was just to be made on the cheap, very, very little money spent on it, to not go anywhere, to actually just be shelved or be thrown in the trash. And that's basically what happened. Fandom, the geek culture, the fans kept this alive. The pirates kept this alive by leaking the copies. And it's kind of a little, like, excuse my language, shitty to do so. You bring all these actors in to play all these roles. You bring in this crew in to do their job. You have these editors who, like, according to Doom, they're doomed rather. They're sneaking in and editing. They're pirating editing time off of other movies or off of fake named movies, just so that they could get this done. And then they even went like there's some promotional stuff with Stan Lee where he's promoting the film, and and he showed up on set all the time. And then it just comes down the line where it's like they all end up getting like cease and desists and everything, and all the prints get seized and supposedly destroyed. And this was not meant to see the light of day. This was just meant to line somebody's pocket, or to get a chokehold on the rights of these characters just for a little bit longer. So actually, yesterday was the first time that I've ever watched Fantastic Four 1994. I've never watched the pirated version. I've known the history of this. I think like Wizard Magazine might have published articles when it came out, because 1994 I probably wouldn't totally have been reading. Well, I was totally reading comics in 1994, so I was probably reading Wizard Magazine at that time, and I was totally into film, so I was probably reading. I don't know whatever film movie magazine came out. It wasn't Fangor. I wasn't reading Fangor. I wasn't big into reading that. But like Filmzine. Was that a thing back in '94? Anyway, so I watched this for the first time, and honestly, I don't hate it. In the early '90s, I guess the films actually came out late '80s. We had Punisher, and we had Captain America, and I actually loved the shit out of Punisher. I actually like Punisher. And this is kind of at a time where I was learning about videoing stuff, and how you could copy stuff, and how you could hook like one VCR up to another and make a copy. Should I be whispering this? Should I not be talking about this as loud? So you can copy like one tape to another. So I went out and rented Punisher, and I think that's like the first copy of anything I've ever made, was copying a rented Punisher movie onto a blank VHS tape so I could watch it, and I used to watch the crap out of it. I actually didn't hate the Punisher movie. Captain America, on the other hand, no. But you know, it's like I didn't really know. I guess like I'm just going to speak off the top of my head. I don't know if this is 100% true, but I know it was it possibly Italy or somebody. It was an Italian production, possibly. It was not an American-made movie, so it had some. It didn't really keep the core story at heart, unlike the MCU of current. But I really loved the crap out of the Punisher, and even moving forward, like after watching this movie, I feel like this movie was pretty on par with like TMNT, which came out in '91. I really feel like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had Fantastic Four had a bigger budget. They probably could have totally pulled it off. I mean, I really liked the Thing makeup. They did really well with the Thing makeup. My only problem is he kind of has this big bulbous part on the top of his head. He kind of has a pecker head. And I assume that's to hide like the gizmos and everything. But if you even in the comics, Thing had like the big pronounced brow and everything, so it's not that bad. And I felt it was pretty outstanding that he still had like facial movements and everything. Like I dug how the Thing looked. And then watching Doom and then find out that they had like one rubber suit and maybe two heads. And that's all they had the budget for. So if this thing broke, that was it. That was it. Comparing it to, say, like the Punisher or like the Captain America film of that time, or of like a decade, a little bit. Well, not even decade, like 5 years before that. I feel like it kind of fit in with those movies. If I would have watched this in '94, I'd been like, whatever, like this just looks like Captain America, or this just looks like the Punisher. It probably would have stuck out, because let's see here, '94 probably would have been Batman Forever. So yeah, there's definitely a big difference with this to Batman Forever. But like I said, I feel like this would be like kind of in a similar position to, say, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The acting was okay. I mean, I love we get Doom right from the beginning. We get Doom in costume. I don't think like the modern Fantastic Fours, like they putted around with that. They messed with his power sets. They messed with his name, because you're Victor Von Doom. Why would he be Doom? You instantly know he's the villain. I didn't even watch the Josh Trank version. I have the Josh Trank version. When it came out, it was like $4 instantly, brand new. So I bought it, but I never watched it. I have no desire to watch it. So like this has a leg up on the modern Josh Trank movie. It has some computer effects. Some of the computer effects I thought were decent. They were okay. They were kind of like what was that, Dark Moon kind of stuff? Who makes like a Puppet Master? Is the Puppet Master? Does I remember calling the right thing? Again, I'm kind of sleepy. I'm sorry. Or Full Moon? Is it Full Moon? I believe it's Full Moon. Anyway, it's kind of on par with those kind of things, which I'm sure was inspired by Corman if he didn't work on a lot of that stuff anyway. I honestly didn't hate this. Is it like the number one Fantastic Four film? No, not at all. I still think the early 2000 ones is okay. It's pretty good. I love that the thing is a physical rubber suit, not a CGI monstrosity. Which I guess is kind of hard to do when you need a big hulking thing. The other thing I wanted to compare it to was things that were out at the time. Like, you know, I mean, we're not too terribly far away from, let's see here, we're not too terribly away from the Incredible Hulk's TV series and such, which is something that they bring up in Doomed. The Incredible Hulk didn't really follow the comics all that well. Captain America, the Punisher, they kind of went and they did their own thing. So they wanted something that was a little bit more at heart, more core to what the comics were. Unfortunately, a lot of the stuff, they had like a lot of rights issues. Just because a character is associated with the Fantastic Four doesn't necessarily mean the licensing extends to all of them. So apparently, according to Doomed, Wesley Snipes was going to play T'Challa. I believe it was T'Challa, if it's not his father, which is the Black Panther. He was supposed to be the Black Panther in the Fantastic Four movie, which they originally wanted the Mole Man, and they kind of rewrite the Mole Man because they couldn't have the Mole Man, so they rewrite the Mole Man as the Jeweler. From all the stink that comes from this movie, you know it's not going to be like the top-notch, you know, I don't know, Top Gun or whatever. But you know, at least you'll get like a Toxic Avenger level, or you'll get Swamp Thing. You know, Swamp Thing was kind of campy and cheesy, and this kind of falls along that line. Again, I feel like if I saw this in '94, I don't think I would have batted an eye at this. And in the documentary Doom, they actually talk about that, where like the pirated, because this has such a history, and the pirated version has been spread around, that more people have watched this movie that has never been produced and is not allowed to come out, is not allowed to be produced. More people have probably seen the pirated copy than if it would have actually premiered. It's kind of crappy to like these actors. And again, you'll see that if you watch Doomed, and I highly recommend, I mean, both of these are on YouTube's, on the YooHoo-tubes, as we refer to in Mr. Lobo Land. If you watch either of these shows, I highly recommend it, even if it's just for a bad movie night or a giggle or whatnot. I wonder if Mr. Lobo and I can sneak Fantastic Four into one of our live streams. But I digest. I know what I said. Most actors and crew use that to springboard to get to their next project, and if that project dies mysteriously, it's not really anything that you can really, you know, use to bolster your career. Some of the actors, it seemed like they did fairly well. Roger Corman tapped a couple of them to come back and work on other projects. And then I know one thing I wanted to point out, that Bug from Uncle Buck. I sat here and watched this entire movie, and I'm like, why does Johnny Storm look so darn familiar? I recognize him. What was he from? And he is Bug from Uncle Buck. There's some trivia. Good luck getting that out of your head. They shot this thing. They didn't inform anybody. If that was the case, that it was from the beginning, they didn't inform anybody. They went as far as like completing the edit. They went as far as promoting, doing one rounds of promotion. They went as far as making poster. I believe that there's, I think they say it in like Connoisseur or something, which is another Corman produced project. There's a Fantastic Four trailer. There's like VHS tapes that have this trailer that exists. So from all those marks, you'd think that this was something that was going to be released. If you're frauding something, if you're doing it just to keep hold of the rights, are you really going to tell everybody? Because nobody's going to show up if you tell everybody like, I'm just scamming you. I'm just scamming the systems just so I can keep a hold of this. And I believe, let me scan down. I think this Eschler guy stayed on, like he's been on all the other Fantastic Four projects. He was in control of Fantastic Four in 2005, Rise of the Silver Surfer in 2007. They were going to reboot the series in 2015, and then Walt Disney, but there's no mention of the Fantastic, the Josh Trank movie on this. But so yeah, so he held on to the rights. But I did trip over. This was the thing that I forgot about. Where like Chris Columbus, Peyton Reed, and Peter Segal all had interest in doing a Fantastic Four movie. And there's speculation that because these were big names that they couldn't have this kind of trashy film come out and kind of taint the water. So that might be one of the sources of why this got buried, so that we could get these guys on board. 1993 is Jurassic Park, and again, Jurassic Park is a high mark. We can't compare like a lot of movies. Like Lawnmower Man came out around that time, and Hackers, and we can't compare a lot of these movies. Power Rangers the movie that have CGIs, to Jurassic Park. That's the high mark. I mean, you watch Jurassic Park now, and that's still top ass animation. But this kind of runs on par with like I said, kind of like even like Godzilla 2000 kind of had that. He looks plasticky, and some of the scenes I thought looked pretty good. They're a little bit over the top. Again, they talk about how they sneak it into this animation house and do these computer animated scenes. So it's like some of them that were kind of like I guess you call matte paintings, CGI matte paintings, if that's a thing. I thought they looked pretty decent. They look out of place, but they look decent for what they were. But then we get to Johnny Storm's Flame On, when he finally flames the hell on. He flames the F on, and wow. Wow, total video game video game segment. Yeah, can you imagine going to Jurassic Park and then going to this afterwards? Well, I don't think it aged. I was going to say it didn't age well, but I don't think it aged well. Like, I don't think it started well to even age well at all. I am running a stream on Mr. Lobo's Cinema Insomnia page, so I do have a chat that's yelling at me. So I'm gonna address the chat here before I sign off and see if there's anything that I might have missed, any insights. I got a lot from Miss Geek 703, which that starts off with Sony Spider-Verse movies are bomb, and it's actually weird. The guy involved with the Roger Corman, I don't know if he was involved from the beginning. I think he took over and was the decision maker of bearing this. Avi Arad. If I said that wrong, I apologize. Which, if memory serves me, he was in charge of the toy line, and I can't think of the name of the toy line right now. But they made all the X-Men, all the Marvel figures, and eventually, after Marvel went bankrupt, I believe he bought Marvel and was in charge of Marvel for the longest time. So this might be the start of when that happened, and maybe that was his choice to tank this film, because like the next thing out would be Blade, and I believe his name is on Blade. I believe his name is on Spider-Man. I believe his name is on all the X-Men movies. I don't think he made the move when Marvel got bought by Disney, because here's the thing. He made the move to Sony, and he produces the Sony movies. So if you look up Venom, and you look up Morbius, and you look up Madam Web, and you look up Kraven the Hunter, you'll probably see his name. I'm pretty sure he's involved with all that Sonyverse stuff. Well, Miss Geek says that she loves them, just not so much after. I love the Raimi movies, particularly 1 and 2. I thought were pretty good. I feel like we got too much executive meddling when we get to the third one, because I don't think Raimi wanted Venom in the third movie. I think that he was voted out by the executives, and that's unfortunate, because I feel like 3 is there's just too many villains. There's too much going on in that movie. There's parts of it that are charming. There's parts of it that I like. But overall, it's kind of a slog. And I don't mind the Amazing Spider-Man movies. It's just, I wanted to see more Raimi stuff. I wanted them to continue. I felt like that's the kind of the thing that kind of bums me a little bit with the Sony Spider-Man stuff, is that they just keep rebooting it like way too quickly. Like, can we get like a little bit more with like this character? Can you at least do a little bit more with this character? I didn't mind the Amazing Spider-Man stuff, but Yeah, it is what it is. I'm glad he got a second bite at the apple when in the MCU. I kind of like that they did that thing. However, now we got the MCU and Sony fighting. You know, I want street level Spider-Man. I'm tired of racing across the multiverse Spider-Man or going into space Spider-Man. I want Spider-Man ground level. I want him teaming up with Daredevil and doing street level stuff. And we got hints of that. He was going to go back to that. And Sony is pushing Disney for this multiverse movie for a second time, and a second live action multiverse movie. And it's like the first one was decent. It was pretty good. Don't go back to the well. Move on. Can we move on? So I believe this is a Disney thing, but I really would wish that Disney would just continue doing stuff with Tom Holland, and then they release Sony or they allow Sony rather to continue to produce stuff with like Tobey Maguire or the other guy. His name escapes me too, and I'm going to trip over that one. But like either produce with either those two people, or do a live action Miles Morales, which I kind of feel like Disney's probably now saving now that Miles Morales is a thing, they're probably saving that for themselves. The only Spider-Verse thing that Sony is doing that is really working for them is the gosh darn animated Spider-Man movies. They are the best. They need to keep their meddling fingers out of it and just let those two guys. I mean, I really wish that Lord and Taylor were still on. I wish that Disney would have let them finish the Han Solo movie. That movie might have been a lot better than what it was. But yeah, I mean, they have their humor nailed down. I mean, I can't argue with the Lego movies. I can't argue with the Spider-Verse movies. I can't argue with, I mean, I came around and actually like 21 Jump Street, believe it or not. Those guys have a really good sense of humor. Miss Geek 703 also says, arguably, The Incredibles was the best attempt at the Fantastic Four. That is the best Fantastic Four movie that was not Fantastic Four. That is everything that Fantastic Four should be. And that was Disney Fantastic Four before Disney owned Marvel Fantastic Four. And to even to do our Madam Webs and tie it even further and spread our webs, that is a Brad Bird movie, which last week we talked about Animal Olympics, which Brad Bird was a part of. So there you go. There's more trivia that you'll never get out of your head. So of course, like the MCU is going to do their own version of the Fantastic Four. I have a little bit of faith on the MCU. It's a crumbling faith at this time because of how they're like kind of fumbling things. I hope that they're going to rein it in. It sounds like they're going to rein it in and get their act together. But they do fairly well with keeping what's at the core of the comic book. It's a little bit now. Spoilers. I'm gonna warn you ahead. If you don't want to know this, I apologize. If you're on the live stream and you're forced to listen to this, I apologize. But Fantastic Four is supposed to take place in the 60s, which predates them before like the Avengers or any of the other supers start showing up on Earth. A lot of the MCU, a lot of the Disney version of the MCU, comes from the comic line that Marvel used to produce called the Ultimates. And at heart, what the Ultimates were comics that came out that there's so much continuity. There's so much continuity to Spider-Man. There's so much continuity to X-Men, the Avengers, Iron Man, all those characters. There's so much that you have to know going in and reading a single issue. So what Marvel decided to do was that they were going to kind of reboot the series. So they were going to continue to produce the stuff that had all the continuity, but on the other hand, they were going to also have a universe that also coincided. It was, because we have a multiverse. Marvel always had a multiverse in the comics. So they did the Ultimate Comics so that young readers could come in. They didn't have to be bogged down by continuity. And then they could summarize the continuity. They could change things around. Like one of the things that I really liked that the Ultimate Comics did, and I don't know if it's really expressed in the MCU as this way, but one of the things that I really liked was that Captain America was the first superhero, and that all the other nations were rushing to try to get their own version of a superhero, but with Captain America, once he gets frozen, once he gets lost, that technology is lost. The scientist that creates him dies, so like that knowledge dies with him. So all that's kind of lost. And I kind of like how they use that to explain a lot of the other superheroes. So the Incredible Hulk is tied in. Instead of him being hit, instead of him going out and saving his buddy and getting hit by gamma radiations during a nuclear testing, he's experimenting and trying to find the superhero serum for himself, and uses himself as a guinea pig, and that's the results. I kind of like that. I kind of like that idea. That's kind of the same deal with like where you get to Weapon X, which I mean, Marvel proper kind of did the same thing where Captain America's Weapon 1, Weapon X or Weapon 10 is Wolverine. And then there's actually weapons in between. There's weapons beyond Weapon X. There's an actual entire Weapon X program, which includes Sabretooth, Deadpool, Agent Zero if you go by the movie, but Maverick if you go by the comic books. Like Ultimate Comics kind of summarized it. They kind of brought that all together, and I kind of like that. And I mean, Ultimate Comics is the first time that you see Nick Fury as a black man, and he looks like Samuel L. Jackson. He just, in the comics, he looks totally like Samuel L. Jackson. And then years later, they cast Samuel L. Jackson into that role. Coincidence? Probably not. So with the Fantastic Four, with that kind of in mind, what they did with the Fantastic Four was like they take out a lot of like that gamma radiation, or that stuff that we don't know. I mean, even the Roger Corman movie, they revolved the story around this comet instead of any type of radiation. Like this comet gave them their powers. This combination of this comet and this diamond. But in the Ultimate Fantastic Four, they're doing interdimensional travel. They're learning interdimensional travel. And the Fantastic Four get lost, and that's how technically Fantastic Five, including Doom, they get lost in time trying to do this. And this is where they kind of acquire their powers, because I think they end up on a planet, or they end up in a dimension or whatever, where they're unshielded, and that kind of mutates their PIM particles. It mutates their cells. I feel like that's what the movie's going to pull from. When they're saying that this is going to take place in the 60s, I kind of feel like, well, we haven't heard of the Fantastic Four before. This is not canon anymore. You don't really hear about them. And I kind of feel like that's why. They do the interdimensional travel and they just disappear. Other stories is that this is not Fantastic Four of MCU isn't 616, but the comics is 616, which is usually the central universe. They're saying like the Fantastic Four isn't the MCU central universe, that they might be an alternate universe. A lot of it is under example where Shala Vale, if I'm saying that right, is the Silver Surfer in this iteration, which fired up a lot of people because why did they make a female Silver Surfer? But if you read the comics, written by Alex Ross, Universe X is called, Shala becomes the Silver Surfer instead of Silver Surfer. And this is alternate storytelling. So makes sense. So that's kind of my thoughts where, what's going to go with the MCU. And I hope that they're like learning their mistakes from their current messes and kind of trying to fix that. But we'll see. Only time will tell. I mean, we get the Mandalorian, and we get the Mandalorian as Reed Richards. I mean, what more can you ask for? Lieutenant Havoc says, the problem with any approach to the Fantastic Four movie is that the studios want a grim and gritty, semi-realistic version of it, and it does not work because Fantastic Four by its nature is goofy superhero stuff. Yes, Later stuff, they kind of, they grounded a little bit later. This was back when Superman and Batman were bowling and playing baseball instead of fighting crime. If you want to be faithful to the source material, make it serious and have fun with the premise. I have to say that I wish that I'd like there to be a middle ground. I like in the it's not current anymore. I don't read much that is actually current, but the last time I read Marvel comics, I loved the whole like Council of Reed Richards, where like all the Reed Richards from all the dimensions all come together and have meetings, and there you see all the different effects of the different Reeds from the different timelines. Like you got a Reed that's wearing the Infinity Gauntlet and has all the gems. I don't know if I want it to be like too goofy or too campy or too over the top, but I don't want super serious either. Like I don't like, I feel that way like with Batman, where it's like I want something like in the middle. I don't hate the Nolan movies. They're decent, but I don't want like the Schumacher movies either. Now that finally came to me, I think Toy Biz used to make all the Marvel toys, and Avi was a part of that. He was part of Toy Biz, and then when Marvel they hit bankruptcy in the 90s. Gee, I wonder did the Fantastic Four come out during the bankruptcy? It must have. So yeah, I think when the bankruptcy happened, he just bought up assets, or he bought up Marvel or whatever, and he became CEO. he bought himself in there. And I mean, Marvel bounced back since the 90s. I can't discredit the dude. There's something went well somewhere. I mean, we still have Marvel to date. We have some like really good stuff that did eventually come out. I mean, we also had like whatever, Heroes Reborn. We had like the Rob Liefeld Heroes Reborn era, where like they're all too beefy, not drawn right. But even still, I mean, that's considered continuity. I love that they consider everything continuity, and they soft reboot stuff or retcon them. So in summary, as far as like the Corman 94, I mean, just release it. Release the Corman cut. If we can release this Snyder cut, release the Corman cut. I believe like the who cares anymore? What, Disney makes the money? What are you hiding at this point? You might as well just put it out. Just put it out in physical media. And you know darn well that the MCU version is probably going to recall the 94 version in some way, or involve the actors in some way. There's going to be a shout out to it. Just make it a thing. Just put it on Disney Plus and just be done with it. It's fine. We all know it. We've all watched it. You might as well make some money off of it. It is fine. It's an encapsulation of the time. Like I said, I feel like it's on par with like Punisher, Captain America, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles that all came out with that time. Is it the top end? Is it Jurassic Park? Is it Batman Forever? No, but it's a good watch. It's an entertaining watch. It's a you don't necessarily engage your mind for it either. It's not a deep thinker, but if in a world where I can watch really crappy Bayformers, I think that Fantastic Four 1994 can exist in that same world. And with that, that is all that I have. I will see you next week in another episode of BestowCast. Have a good one. I'd like to thank these Patreon and YouTube members for helping support episodes like this and more. Michael Housel, Gothic Unicorn, Outer Space International. If you'd like to help back Bestow TV and earn special bonus perks, please join us on our YouTube membership area or patreon.com/BestowTV. Thanks again.